joining us to welcome a new sponsor to Property Tribes. It is our tenant referencing tribe that has a new partner, and it's a relatively new company called Let Mojo, and I'm joined by CEO Mark Tidridge. So welcome along to Property Tribes, Mark. Great to have you on board. Let's just start off. You guys, between you, the team on Let Mojo, have got over 25 years experience in the lettings and tenant referencing business. Tell us a little bit about the history of Let Mojo and where you are in your business journey.
Yeah, hi Vanessa. Yeah, so Let Mojo, some of your clients and some of your fan base will know Rent Shield Direct as a brand. It was part of the Barban Insurance Group, was part of the Barban Insurance Group now. Let Mojo is the senior management team from Rent Shield Direct. So at the back end of the pandemic, Barban made some decisions to change the way their operation worked, and I'm based down in lucky sunny Devon, as you can tell by the background at the moment, which is where Rent Shield was. And I ran Rent Shield for near on 12 years. Alongside the rest of the management team, and Barban then moved the brand and centralised it all in their Lincoln operations along some of their bigger brands, and we were all sort of politely let go from the business. So we thought, you know what, we had a really good business previously, we understood the marketplace, we'd carved out a niche for ourselves, and the management team got together. We went back to the original founder and owner of Rent Shield, which is a guy called Gary Abraham, and we spoke to him, and the group of us got together and started Let Mojo. So we're just coming up just over a year old now, and going from success to success, picked up from where we left off with Rent Shield Direct. So that's how we came about.
Well, obviously there have been challenging times for businesses and indeed landlords, and at Property Tribes we're very, very big advocates of robust tenant referencing. The best way to never experience a bad tenant is never to let one step foot over the threshold of your buy-to-let property in the first place. So we're always delighted to learn about new products and new companies like Let Mojo. You've got two tenant referencing propositions and also a right to rent checking service as well. Would you like to tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, so I mean, we totally agree with the aspect you're talking about there about robust tenant referencing. Certainly, we've seen over the last probably 2 to 3 years now, there's been a raft of businesses that have started things with open banking. We work on the premise that a full robust tenant reference, so speaking to the employer, speaking to their current landlord, we'll also speak to their previous landlord. And when I say speak, we will actually pick up the phone and speak to these people. So, there's various different platforms out there that will do various different things. We work on the premise that a human speaking to another human is generally the best way of getting a gauge for the level of accuracy of the information that we've been provided. It allows us to ask further questions. So our initial sort of outline is to say full referencing. That's what we tend to do. That's our main bag, as it were. It's the similar sort of process you're going to get from some of the bigger providers in the marketplace. So if you're looking at a sort of market leader like a Home Let or a Good Lord, somewhere in those sort of regions, it's exactly the same type of tenant referencing. However, we'd like to think we've got a little bit more customer service going on. That was always the niche that Rent Shield held before, is that you've always got a person to speak to at the end of the phone, which is what we will try and do through our referencing. We also offer credit searches. We know there's a section of the marketplace that just want to get some sort of basic credit search and then do their own tenant reference and follow up themselves. So we also offer those services. And then right to rent checking. So right to rent checking, as we know, we've got different legislation that's come in place from April. The government has politely given us till September to get their ducks in a row. So we've got a right to rent checking service that will enable someone to take a document, whether it's a passport, a visa. We can confirm whether the format of the codes on the passport are correct. We've also got the ability to check someone's facial ID, and that's through biometric testing. So in easy terms, someone takes a selfie with their mobile phone, they can confer that against the passport and they can say, yes, this is the likeness of the person. So it helps people be secure in the knowledge that they've got the right person on the end of the phone in front of them, they've got the right to rent in the UK. All their documentation is then stored, and you also then get The additional benefit of one of our systems is that it'll give you reminders if someone's right to rent is then coming towards the end and you need a reminder to go back and get a further right to rent. So that's our core proposition. Full referencing is what I would say is our core. We also do credit searches, and we've also got the ability to do right to rent. So it's similar to what's out in the marketplace at the moment. And the way we would describe ourselves is we're not a computer says no. So our guys will speak to people. It's predominantly a human-led surface. It's predominantly a human-led service. And we believe that's the best way to get the best tangible reference back from someone. Too many people out there at the moment, I believe personally, have got very automated processes. It's run by computer. It's based on algorithms, or it's based on a bit of programming knowledge. And a lot of these firms that have cropped up over probably 2 or 3 years, and you will know lots of them out there, different, I'm not going to name them, but they go by different names. It's very clever people that have come out of university. They've written algorithms. They're able to go and do something called open banking. They can go and scrape someone's open banking file. They can bring back a little bit of data, and they can provide you with what they're calling is a reference. They're not. They're confirming some of the details that as a tenant has placed on a form. We want to look a bit deeper. We want to find out what their affordability is, how long they've been working somewhere. Are they about to leave? Have they just started their job? What does their previous landlord say about them? They may have had rent arrears, but did they clear those rent arrears? These are all things that under these automated systems, under normal circumstances, will give a tenant a complete and utter fail, and they won't be able to go into your property. They could be the best tenants you could ever think of, but the computer has just said no. So our guys will speak to people, and our guys will actually make some of those questions go a little bit deeper. And we'll always work with the landlord or the letting agent, and we'll always work with them to try and say, look, our job is to try and, if we can, is to try and work with the tenant and work with you for what is best for your property. If we can put a tenant in your property by saying to you, we believe this person needs a guarantor, or if they pay some savings, or if they pay a little bit up front, that's what we want to work with. We want to work with the people that work with us, because we think that engenders a good relationship. And our business is your business at the end of the day. So we wouldn't be here without landlords or letting agents.
Well, it's really interesting you said about the more, I guess we could call it, holistic approach to tenant referencing, because we have been through a pandemic for the last 2 years. Things have happened to people that were beyond their control, and for them not to be able to access private sector housing because of some fairly, what could be a relatively minor thing that as a computer just kicks back on. I think it's really good what you've said, because there are many good tenants out there that might not tick every single box, as I say, perhaps through no fault of their own. And in this time that we're in, where we've all come through a very difficult time, I think it's nice to have just that little bit more understanding and empathy with people's situations.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to common sense as well. It's, exactly as you say, we've all been through 2 years of a pandemic, and we're all going to come out of it scarred in different ways. And housing is the most important thing. We know we're in a crisis where we've got lack of stock availability. The government is changing things for right or for wrong, on a monthly basis within this sector. And so, we want a common sense approach to what we do in terms of marketing. We want to look at, how we look at your tenants. We'll work with you to put them in the property if we can. No one wants a bad tenant in their property. So, that the reality of the situation is that, where you've got someone that has got a checkered history, and something that doesn't line up, we can't talk about extreme examples, but we've had one very recently. To give you a silly example, Isle of Man, 2 Russian tenants, bank statements provided, and the bank statements, well, it's scary how many errors, because they've clearly been made up by themselves. And in this day and age, that's where you're going. We'll protect you from that type of person, but where you've got a general run-of-the-mill person that wants a home they can live in for a number of years, that's what we're going to try and find for you. And I think, we're very fortunate that even though we're a very young company, because we've got a lot of experience in the industry, we've got a lot of our team have got 5 to 10 years experience of just doing tenant referencing. So when it came to look for rent guarantee products, and we know that Property Tribes has got a time with Alan Boswell already, we went to them immediately They looked at our background, they looked at the company we were previously, they looked at the management team, and they said quite happily that our references are more than happy to be accepted for their rent guarantee products as well. So, you can take the premise of a 25-year experience in tenant referencing. If you then want to add rent guarantee to it, you're going to have no problems if you use a Let Mojo reference. And it's a people-led service. If you've got a question, you've got a query, you pick up the phone, you speak to us, you don't get through to a call center, you don't have to fill in a web form, you're going to answer there and then. That's going to be our USP moving forward. I think COVID has given innumerable businesses the excuse to give terrible customer service. And I think that's where we sort of also fit a niche.
That's interesting to hear. I mean, landlords are having a ball at the moment in terms of tenant demand. It's going through the roof. We're hearing this week of tenants willing to pay more than the market rent to secure the property. But I still think it's important, Mark, and I'm sure you'll agree, that the tenant that's willing to slam down a deposit and pay a higher rent may not necessarily be the best tenant. You should still reference, if you've got a choice of maybe 2 or 3, would you recommend referencing all 3 and reaching a conclusion as to which one you feel has the best credentials for the property?
I think we find that more and more nowadays. I've got a couple of properties myself, so I know exactly what we're going through. I think certainly from landlord's point of view, I think there's a lot of landlords nowadays that do what we would call a pre-vet. So they'll have their own sort of questions set themselves. There's going to be questions that a landlord will want answered, which is over and above the scope of what a tenant referencing firm will do. So, as a tenant referencing firm, we're not going to do a forensic analysis on the history of the tenant. But I certainly go down the line and say, there is so much demand. You want to try and do the best fit for your property and for your business and your livelihood. At the end of the day, it's a massive investment you put into a property. You can't afford to take the risk, certainly because in this day and age, it's challenging with the delays in the courts. If you get the terrible tenant and you need to evict them, it's not just a victim, it's the damage they've caused and the misrent they've paid. So if you've got a couple of tenants in there and you need to reference them, I don't think it's a bad idea. Even if you just do credit searches to start with and then choose someone else to do a full reference, and hone it down. You know what it's like now. If you put an advert out for a property, you're going to get 50, 100 inquiries. You've got to narrow that down. So I would have said that a lot of private landlords are going to have their own initial vetting service. When they get through to what they think is their shortlist, then take it to the next stage, get a professional company in, let them do the referencing for you, because those guys will also have experience in checking fake and fraudulent documents. It's something that doesn't get talked about enough, particularly where you've got, again, in the marketplace, there are providers out there that will provide what they would just deem as a very cheap reference. And basically all that's happening is that company is sending a set of forms to a tenant. The tenant is collating those forms, completing it, and it's sending it back to a lettings negotiator, or it's sending it back to the landlord. And it's asking the landlord to make decisions on a set of documentation. Now, we have training documents that will have mistakes on that, unless you've been trained on it, you'll never pick up on what the areas might be. It could be spelling mistakes in a document. It could be the wrong addresses. It can be as much as spaces in documents where there shouldn't be spaces in documents. It can be old logos. It can be checking that the numbers add up. Everything. It's just a myriad of different things that check a false document. And that's where our guys have become very skilled over a number of years of having seen it. And so I would always say use a professional firm. And as you say, be wary of the tenant that says, I can put, 6 months rent down, and pay 6 months in advance, whatever it is you want to do. Why? Where, that's unusual in this day and age. You speak to people that have, they're leaving one property, so they've got a deposit usually tied up in one property. They then got to pay a deposit for another property, and they've got to pay a month in advance, and then they'll get their original deposit back, providing nothing's untoward with the existing property. So cash flow for tenants when they're moving between properties is always tight. And those are little things that I would say, even from my own perspective as a landlord myself, I'd always be suspicious about that. It's better to have a choice of 2 or 3, once you've narrowed it down and get it done professionally, than jump in for what seems to be the best choice, because, when it seems too good to be true, it normally is.
Well, I would say it always is. And we've got quite a good discussion on Property Tribes called Cheap Often Turns Out to Be Expensive in Property. So it's important that landlords do recognise it's worth paying for quality service. And just to add on to what you said about filtering, we have a couple of threads on Property Tribes, which one that I created and one that was created by a member called BProp, Mick. They're all about the questions to filter down before you go for a full reference. So I will put the links to those underneath this video because they're very, very useful. So I guess as we close this out, Mark, how do landlords access Let Mojo's services?
So they can contact Let Mojo. There'll be a banner link that goes onto Property Tribes, and they can contact me through Property Tribes because I'll be active on the forum itself. The easiest way is going to be letmojo.com. So it's letmojo.com. On there, you'll see all the services we offer. There's a separate segment specifically for landlords, so you can see the products and services we can offer direct for landlords. Get hold of us through there. We can get you set up within a matter of minutes. If you've got a tenant you want to put through, we can pretty much do it within a couple of hours of you signing up to the site, get you signed up. And then generally speaking, within 24 hours, 48 hours, you're going to get your reference back. And you'll speak to one of the team if you need to, and fingers crossed that everything goes well. But, sometimes the best references or the best job that we do for our landlords or our letting agent clients is purely and simply the first reference that goes through, it fails because we pick up lots of different problems, and I would honestly say that's probably the best reference we ever do, because it's where you get something that goes through cleanly. You go, okay, great, well done. But when the first one from a new customer goes through and you say there's loads of problems with it, we can't say this is the person we would say for your property, it proves that we've just done our job. We're not here to do anything other than protect the landlords and their properties.
Well, that takes us full circle to where we started, where I said the best thing is never to let a delinquent tenant through the doorway in the first place. And it's great to have your considerable industry knowledge and experience, Mark, as part of the tribe. And we look forward to you commenting and answering tenant referencing questions going forward.
Absolutely.
Because I think that's one of the key benefits of our sponsors for our community, is that you can actually answer questions, you can provide guidance, and we build that trust between the community and the sponsor, because we've got this lovely little ecosystem of landlords that need these products and services, and they want to know who to go to.
Absolutely. We're there to help. We've known about the forum for many, many years. We've had many conversations in the past about it. It's come around. This is the right time for us to actually do business together and work with your forum to help them. We want to help people because there's a lot of misinformation about what referencing companies do, what they can do. And realistically, the business is not a bad business. We're there to help landlords. We want to protect your interests. That's why we do it. That's why, when we reference our own tenants for our own properties, we put references through our own business, for the same reasons. We all have investments. We want to protect those investments, and we want to make sure that the landlord's happy, if the tenant's happy, and then that's a really good relationship for many years to come, as can be seen through many different threads when you go through the forum itself. Once you get a happy tenant, stick with them.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, we're getting a lot of newcomer landlords joining Property Tribes and dipping their toe in the buy-to-let water. And I think, the number one key fear of landlords is the tenant going to stop paying the rent and maybe even damage the property? Well, there's a solution. It's Let Mojo. So I'll put some details underneath the video of how people can get in touch with Mark and his team at Let Mojo. But they are the new lettings and referencing kid on the block here. We're delighted to have them on board Property Tribe, sponsoring our tenant referencing discussion. So thank you very much, Mark, for your support of Property Tribes and helping landlord education, because it's all about risk mitigation at the end of the day, isn't it?
It is, very much. No, we appreciate it, and we're looking forward to working with you guys. Thanks, Vanessa.
Thank you.